It was a cloudy Thursday afternoon when Marcus Carter pulled into the parking lot of Lincoln Elementary. He had finished his shift at the auto shop early and thought he'd surprise his daughter, Lila, before her school bus picked her up. It was something he didn't do often, showing up unannounced, but today felt different. Maybe it was the way Lila had been quieter at dinner lately, or how she always asked to stay up just a little later than usual, like she didn't want the day to end. Marcus stepped out of his old pickup truck and adjusted his cap. The school looked peaceful from the outside. Bright walls, colorful murals painted by students, and the soft sound of children laughing echoed from the playground. He walked toward the front office, greeted by the secretary with a warm smile. "Hi, there, can I help you?" she asked. "I'm here to see my daughter, Lila Carter," he said politely. "I know it's not parent-teacher conference day, but I just wanted to say hi." "Oh, sweetie," the secretary replied, checking her screen. "She's still in class. Let me call her teacher and let her know." A few minutes later, Lila came walking down the hall, surprised and happy to see her dad. Her eyes lit up as she gave him a quick hug. "What are you doing here?" she whispered with a smile. "Just wanted to check on my favorite girl," he said, ruffling her hair. They walked back to her classroom together so Marcus could sign her out for a few minutes. That's when he noticed something strange. Lila's shoulders were tense and her steps slowed as they neared the door. Inside, Mrs. Ellison, Lila's teacher, was packing up her desk. She glanced over and frowned slightly when she saw Marcus. "Mr. Carter?" she said, clearly not expecting him. "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, just wanted to stop by," Marcus replied, trying to keep it friendly. Mrs. Ellison nodded but didn't smile. Lila stayed close to her dad, almost hiding behind him. Then, as Marcus turned to leave, he caught sight of Lila's desk. There, stuck to the corner, was a crumpled paper with big red letters, "Liar," written across it. His stomach dropped. He looked back at the teacher. "Did you see this?" he asked, pointing at the note. Mrs. Ellison barely looked at it. "Children write things all the time, it's probably nothing." But Marcus knew better. He saw the fear in Lila's eyes, the way she avoided looking at her teacher. Something wasn't right, and that's when he decided he couldn't just walk away. Marcus stood frozen for a moment, his hand resting gently on Lila's shoulder. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. The note, the teacher's cold response, and most of all, the fear in his daughter's eyes. It didn't feel like nothing. He turned back to Mrs. Ellison. "This doesn't look like nothing to me," he said calmly but firmly. Mrs. Ellison sighed, closing her laptop. "Mr. Carter, we take these things seriously, but you have to understand, kids say things. It's part of growing up. But not when it comes from the teacher," Marcus replied quietly, his voice steady. Lila looked up at him, eyes wide. She hadn't told him everything yet, but she didn't need to. He could see it in her face, how much this had hurt her. "Can I just get my bag?" Lila asked softly. Mrs. Ellison nodded, stepping aside. As Lila walked to her desk, Marcus noticed how she avoided eye contact with the other students. Some of them glanced at her, then quickly looked away. When Lila returned, her backpack slung over one shoulder, Marcus gave the teacher a polite nod. "I'll be in touch," he said. Outside, the fresh air felt like a relief. Lila took a deep breath as they walked toward the car. "You didn't have to come today," she said after a while. "I'm glad I did," Marcus replied, opening the door for her. As soon as they were inside the car, Lila started to speak. "It's been happening for weeks," she whispered. "She calls on me last during roll call. She says I talk too loud. She laughs when I raise my hand. And that note, it wasn't another student. She wrote it." Marcus felt his chest tighten. He kept his voice calm. "Are there others who saw her do it?" Lila shook her head. "Not that I know of." Back home, Marcus sat with Lila at the kitchen table. He made her favorite grilled cheese and orange slices, trying to bring some normalcy back into her day. But his mind was spinning. That night, after tucking Lila into bed, he picked up his phone. With a deep breath, he dialed 911. "This is Marcus Carter," he said when the operator answered. "I'd like to report something that happened at Lincoln Elementary today." His voice didn't shake. He knew what he had to do. The next morning was quiet but not peaceful. Lila woke up early, sitting at the kitchen table with her backpack already on. She wasn't sure what to expect. Her dad had told her that someone from the school would come to talk to her, and maybe a police officer too. Marcus made her pancakes, trying to keep things normal. "No matter what happens today," he said gently, "just remember, you did the right thing." Lila nodded even though her stomach felt like it was tied in knots. When they arrived at school, there was a new face waiting by the office, a woman with kind eyes and a soft voice. She introduced herself as Ms. Rivera, a child protection worker sent by the school district. She smiled warmly at Lila. "Hi there," she said. "Would you be okay talking with me for a little bit?" Lila looked at her dad. He gave her a small nod. "I'll be right here," he promised. Inside a small meeting room, Ms. Rivera asked gentle questions. She wanted to know how long the teacher had been acting unkindly, what exactly had happened, and if any other students had seen it. Lila shared everything. How Mrs. Ellison always seemed to pick on her, how she called her loud and messy, how she made her feel like she didn't belong. "I didn't think anyone would believe me," Lila whispered. Ms. Rivera placed a hand over hers. "I believe you," she said, "and we're going to make sure this gets fixed." Outside, Marcus waited. A school administrator came out to speak with him. "We're taking this seriously," she said. "Mrs. Ellison has been asked to stay home until we complete our investigation." Marcus exhaled slowly. It was a start. Later that day, a police officer also stopped by the school. He spoke briefly with Marcus and reviewed the report. "We don't take these calls lightly," he said. "You did the right thing protecting your daughter." By the time they got back home, Lila seemed lighter. She played her favorite music, danced in the living room, and even laughed again. But Marcus knew this was only the beginning. The school had started an investigation. Parents were talking. Some supported him. Others didn't understand why he had gone so far, but none of that mattered. All that mattered was his daughter, and making sure she never felt invisible again. Of course, here is Part 4, 500 words, of the story. The bell rings twice. Written in simple, engaging third-person style English. This part continues to build emotional depth while keeping things appropriate and compelling. Word spread quickly through Lincoln Elementary. By Monday morning, parents were whispering, in the parking lot. Some gave Marcus quiet nods of support. Others avoided looking at him altogether. Lila felt the change too. Some students stared, while others seemed unsure how to act around her. Inside the school, things looked the same, but felt different. Mrs. Ellison's classroom was empty. A new teacher had taken over for now, a kind woman named Mr. Alvarez who smiled a lot and made sure every student felt seen. He greeted Lila warmly on her first day back in class. "Glad you're here," he said. "Let's make this a good year for everyone." Lila sat at her desk, still a little nervous. But as the day went on, she noticed something. Mr. Alvarez called on her like any other student. He listened when she spoke. And when another student made a joke about her being too loud, Mr. Alvarez gently reminded the class that everyone's voice matters. After lunch, Ms. Rivera from the school district came by again. She pulled Lila aside for just a few minutes. "I wanted to let you know," she said softly. "You've helped us see some things we didn't notice before." Lila blinked. "Did I do something wrong?" "No," Ms. Rivera said quickly. "You did something very brave, and because of that, we're making changes." That afternoon, Marcus got a call from the school principal. "We've completed our internal review," she said. "We're moving forward with formal action against Mrs. Ellison. We're also offering sensitivity training to all staff." Marcus leaned back in his chair, letting it sink in. It wasn't the end of everything, but it was progress. Still, Not everyone agreed with what he'd done. At the grocery store later that week, a man behind him muttered, "Should have kept it in the house." Marcus turned slowly. "I did what I had to do to protect my daughter." Back home, he found Lila coloring at the kitchen table. She looked up and smiled. "Guess what?" she said. "Today I raised my hand 5 times in class." "And?" Marcus asked. "And Mr. Alvarez called on me every time." Marcus felt something warm in his chest, something like pride, something like hope. He pulled out a chair and sat beside her. "You keep raising your hand, baby," he said, "and I'll always be right here watching you." Of course, here's Kier. Part 5, 500 words, of the story. The bell rings twice. Written in simple, engaging, third-person style English. This part continues to build emotional tension and character growth, while keeping content appropriate and compelling. The school board meeting was held in the Lincoln Elementary Gymnasium, which had been set up with folding chairs and a small stage. Parents, teachers, and community members filled the room. Marcus sat near the front with Lila beside him, holding her hand tightly. This wasn't where he expected to be when he dropped off his truck for repairs or fixed someone's brakes at work. But here he was, waiting to speak about something that mattered more than any car engine ever could. On the stage sat the school board, the district superintendent, and a few administrators. Ms. Rivera stood nearby, ready to share what they had learned from the investigation. When Marcus's name was called, he stood slowly. Lila looked up at him. "You got this," she whispered. He gave her a small smile and walked forward. The room grew quiet as he stepped to the microphone. "I'm not here because I wanted attention," Marcus began. "I'm here because my daughter deserves to feel safe in school. She deserves respect, every child does." A few people nodded. What happened to Lila wasn't just one bad day. It was weeks of being treated differently, ignored, mocked, and finally, humiliated. His voice stayed calm but firm. "I didn't call 911 to hurt anyone. I did it so no other kid would feel like they had to stay quiet." He paused, then added, "We don't have to accept things just because they've always been that way." After Marcus spoke, Ms. Rivera shared the findings. The school confirmed that Mrs. Ellison had violated professional conduct policies. While there would be no criminal charges, she would not be returning to teach at Lincoln Elementary. There were mixed reactions from the crowd. Some parents clapped quietly. Others left without saying a word. Afterward, a few families came up to Marcus to thank him. One mother said, "My son's been acting different since school started. Now I understand why." Even some teachers approached him with appreciation. "It takes courage to speak up," one said. "Thank you." But not everyone agreed. Later that week, Marcus found a note tucked under his windshield wiper. It read, "Not every problem needs a spotlight." He folded it and threw it away without another thought. That night, he sat with Lila on the couch. "You made a difference today," she said, leaning into him. "So did you," he replied, kissing the top of her head. Outside, the world was still turning, but inside their home, something new had begun. Hope. Of course. Here is part 6, 500 words, of the story. The bell rings twice, written in a simple, engaging third-person style English. This part continues to build emotional depth and character growth while keeping content appropriate and compelling. The days after the school board meeting felt different, not just for Marcus and Lila, but for the whole school. Mr. Alvarez had become the full-time teacher, and he made sure every student knew they mattered. He started a new tradition. Each morning, students shared something good that happened to them the day before. It was small, but it made the classroom feel warmer. Lila began raising her hand more often. She even volunteered to read aloud in front of the class. Her voice didn't shake like it used to. Still, not everything changed overnight. Some parents kept their kids home for a few days, unsure how to talk about what had happened. A few teachers seemed quieter at school, as if walking on eggshells, afraid to say the wrong thing. And though Mrs. Ellison was no longer at Lincoln Elementary, some people still whispered her name with sympathy. Marcus noticed the shift when he came to pick up Lila from school. One afternoon, a mother he didn't know stopped him near the car line. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said quietly. "My daughter's been holding back for years, afraid to speak up, afraid to stand out. Seeing your girl be brave made me realize I needed to be brave too." Marcus nodded, touched by her words. At work, things were different too. Some customers avoided him, but others thanked him. One older man left a $20 tip after getting his oil changed and said, "You stood up for all of us." It wasn't easy being in the spotlight, but Marcus didn't regret it. One evening, Lila sat at the kitchen table coloring, humming softly to herself. "You seem happy," Marcus said as he chopped vegetables for dinner. "I am," she replied. "I don't feel scared anymore." He smiled. "That makes two of us." But even as life settled into a new rhythm, Marcus knew this was only the beginning. Change was slow. It didn't come with a loud bell or flashing lights. It came in quiet moments, like a child raising her hand, a parent speaking up, a teacher listening. Later that week, Marcus got a letter in the mail. It was from the school district. They were starting a new parent advisory group focused on fairness and respect in classrooms. His name was on the list of suggested members. He stared at the paper for a long time. Then he folded it carefully and placed it on the fridge beside Lila's latest drawing, a picture of her and him, standing tall, side by side. Outside, the wind blew gently through the trees, and inside, something powerful was growing. Understanding. Of course. Here is Part 7, 500 words. The final part of the story. The bell rings twice. Written in simple, engaging third-person style English. This conclusion brings emotional closure while keeping content appropriate and uplifting. Spring came slowly to Lincoln Elementary. The trees bloomed, the playground echoed with laughter again, and something felt lighter in the air. Lila sat on the school steps after class, sketching the view with her favorite pencil. She wasn't afraid anymore. In fact, she was smiling, because today she had been chosen to help lead a new student council project about kindness and fairness. Inside the school, Mr. Alvarez was preparing for a special assembly. He had invited Marcus to speak, not just as Lila's dad, but as a parent who helped start something important. Marcus stood backstage watching students file into the gym. He saw familiar faces. Some smiled at him, others still seemed unsure. That was okay. Change didn't happen all at once. When his name was called, he stepped forward. "I'm not a teacher," he began, "and I'm not a leader in this school, but I am someone who believes every child deserves to feel safe, respected, and heard." He looked out at the crowd and found Lila sitting near the front, giving him a thumbs up. "My daughter taught me that courage doesn't always look loud or dramatic," he said. "Sometimes it's just raising your hand when you're scared, or speaking up when no one else will." A few parents clapped softly. Some teachers nodded. After the assembly, several families came up to thank him. One young boy even handed him a small drawing of a man standing tall beside a girl with a big smile. That night, back home, Marcus and Lila sat at the kitchen table coloring together. "You were amazing today," Lila said. "So were you," he replied. They talked about how far they'd come, from that quiet afternoon when she showed him a crumpled note, to now, where her voice filled classrooms and hallways. Later that week, the school announced a new program, Student Voices, where kids could share their thoughts and concerns with teachers and staff each month. And Marcus, he officially joined the parent advisory group, not because he wanted power, but because he believed in change and in protecting the next child who might need someone to stand beside them. One evening, as the sun set over the neighborhood, Marcus stood outside watching Lila ride her bike. With friends, she laughed, her voice clear and strong. The bell had rung twice, once for pain, once for hope, and maybe, just maybe, it would ring again, for the better.